As we look at this here this morning, I need you to look at it and I need you to see it for exactly what it is as we look at this. I need you to see and understand that the master here has stepped away for just a minute. He was not there, that they was kind of there without Jesus for just a minute. And lo and behold, while he was away, some people came unto him. I need you to understand that this is us on a daily basis, because at some point, just as our Brother Lucas brought out this morning, at some point there can be somebody coming to you, and they can come unto you with a desire. They can come unto you with a need. And his disciples here, they may have been a little bit full of themselves for just a few minutes. They may have really thought they was going to be able to do something, but understand that it says when he came to his disciples, when he came again unto them, it says he saw a great multitude about him. There's tons of people that was around. And when you think of a great multitude, you're not thinking of 3 or 4. 3 or 4 is not a great multitude. You're looking at maybe an entire city block of people that is around. And I want you to try to imagine the noise coming from all this. Because no doubt as Jesus came, he seen all these people gathered together. He could hear the noise. He could probably hear some of the people, maybe some of the things that they were saying. Well, they can't do this or they can't do that. Who are these people? And so on and so forth. But understand that there was noise coming from this. And it says, when he came unto his disciples, he saw a great multitude about them, and the scribes questioning with them. And for lack of better words, we're going to say that some religious people was talking with him. Maybe not some faith people, but some religious people was here talking to him. But understand that they was there. They may it's almost as if you get the picture painted that they've got their backs against the wall and the people's got their fingers pointed at them, and you can tell that they're in a true time of need. Because there's probably a multitude of people. Can you imagine how many people's pointing their fingers and asking questions and hollering to them? Well, hey, you said this, and hey, well, you said that, and well, what about this? You guys have done this before, and you guys have done this. Well, what about, what's wrong with you now? Can you not do anything? You probably had some non-believers there, some doubters throwing that out. But no doubt there was some believers there as well. We know you can do this. Come on, what are you waiting for? You know you've got it in. You guys have done this. Why are you waiting? Come on, help this man. Help him. Well, don't just stand there. Do something. You know what I would be doing? You'd be stuttering. You'd be looking around. You'd be thinking, please, Lord, somebody do something. One of you's talk. Peter, where are you at? You talk. Well, John, why don't you talk? Why don't we get this guy back here? Why don't we get him doing this? Let's get this guy involved. He's a more people person. You know, he knows the people in this area. Why don't you calm the crowd? Imagine the turmoil that's going on, that is unfolding, that is not really spoken of right here. But do you know what is amazing? Just as always, Jesus showed up at just the right time. Had he gotten there earlier, the disciples would not have benefited. Had he come a lot later, they really wouldn't have benefited. But he came at the exact moment that he needed to arrive. So church, I guess for the first portion of this, I need you to understand, though you're sitting here waiting on Christ, don't look for him until he needs to be here. Until he needs to show up in your life, that's when he will arrive. He's not going to show up early and he's not going to show up late. He's going to show up exactly when he's supposed to be there. And straightway all the people, when they beheld him, were greatly amazed, and running to him saluted him. So all these people had heard of Jesus. They heard of him. They knew what he could do. They knew what he has done. But all these people, they come running up to him, they're like, oh, Jesus, thank goodness you're here. Hallelujah, we're so happy to see you. These people following you, they can't do nothing. We're glad that you're finally here. You ever been there? You ever been to the point where, because lo and behold, nobody here has ever had like your order messed up, or nobody's ever got been trying to return something to the to Walmart or to wherever, and you just ain't really getting nowhere real quick. You know, things ain't happening as quick as they are. And all you want, what is it that we want? Let me speak to your boss. Let me speak to the manager. Let me speak to your supervisor. Let me do this. Let me go to the one above you. Do we do that? Yes. Sure enough, preacher, we do that. What does that have to do with anything? Well, nothing just yet, but stay with me, fold that up, put it in your back pocket. We may be back to that. Understand that they wanted to go above the disciples. Because just any person in the church wasn't working at that moment. Because their heart was in the right place, kind of. As you're going to find out when you get into this story, that there was somebody that was brought unto them, and they had compassion upon him, and they had a desire to help. But they wasn't quite sure how to do it. One of the multitude answered and said, Master. And I told you to underline master. Notice he calls him master as if he is superior unto him. Amen? He recognizes that he truly is someone. But he don't know who. Oddly enough, he has no idea who he is. He knows he is Jesus. He knows that everybody's excited to see him, and he knows that he should call him master, but he has no earthly idea to whom he is speaking, and that becomes evident later in the story. But it says, Master, I have brought unto thee my son. He's trying to be nice here. When he's really wanting to say, I brought my boy into your disciples and they couldn't do nothing. I brought my boy who really needs help into your disciples, and they really had compassion and they really wanted to do something, but they just ain't really well trained in how to do the things that they need to be doing. So I asked to speak to their supervisor, and well, here you are. So I need help. My boy here, he's got a problem, and I need you to do something. I need just a little bit of help from you. And whithersoever he taketh him, he teareth him. And he's telling him that he has a dumb spirit about him, that he is will not really get all up into that portion of it, but he has an ailment here. And it begins to explain what happens to him. And he tells him, well, I spake to thy disciples that they should cast him out. Master, I came unto your people with a need. Master, I came to your people with a need in my life and in my family, and I came to your people and I came expecting help, but they couldn't do nothing. They said that they would, but they can't. Ain't you glad Jesus showed up at this moment? But Jesus says something here. And he is not speaking to the man. He is not speaking to the one who called him master. He turns unto his people and he says, O faithless generation. Because sometimes whenever you finally get to see the manager at the McDonald's or the Walmart or Longhorn or wherever you're at, and they say, well, MD, you could have handled this. You know, all you would have had to have done was this, this, and this. And, you know, I wouldn't have to got called over here. I wouldn't be giving away free appetizers. I wouldn't be trying to give you a gift card. I wouldn't be trying to smooth things over here. Oh, faithless generation. Oh, group of employees who have no initiative to do anything. Oh, group of people here who I have told you and taught you and told you and taught you refuse to hear what I say. Because this group of strangers approached him, called him master, and saluted him, and they were so excited that he came, and many of them never met him. They've only heard stories. But, O faithless generation, how long shall I be with you? He's asking his disciples a question here because he has already told them a few times that the Son of Man shall be delivered over into the hands of these people, and he shall die, he shall be crucified, and on the third and appointed day he shall rise again. As you get to the latter portion of this story, he's going to reiterate that unto them. But understand, he says, how long am I going to be able to come behind you and clean up your mess? But he didn't say, "O ye people that are hard of hearing. O ye people that refuse to listen." He says a specific adjective unto them. A specific description unto his disciples. He called them faithless. They was living with him. They traveled with him. They went everywhere that he went. They seen all the many miracles that he had done, all the things that at this point that Jesus had done. They was there, and he called them faithless. Because this man here, who again called him master, coming to him, and he was seeking something from him. He had no real idea what he could get, but he came to him with a need. The disciples had saw with their very eyes what could happen. These people had only heard with their ears what could have happened, but they came. And he says, "O faithless generation, how long shall I be with you? How long shall I suffer you? How long am I going to put up with this?" He is needing them to step up here. Church, catch this. He is needing them to step up here. He is needing them when someone is asking questions about the church and so on and so forth. He's needing the congregation, if you will, to be able to handle the matters and say, well, let's not, let me call the preacher, let me call the deacons, let me talk to my Sunday school teachers. He is needing them to be able to have the initiative and the ability to handle there. But Jesus said, nonetheless, bring him to me. Now this is the part that I find that kind of, I'm not really, it's going to come across wrong when I say this, but I find this portion amusing. And I'll explain why. But it says that they brought him unto him, and when he saw him, straightway the spirit tarried him, and he fell on the ground and wallowed foam him. So as soon as the boy saw Jesus, or as soon as the evil spirit saw Jesus, he fell to the ground and began seizing and having convulsions and foaming at the mouth. He began, there was a real emergency happening here. Imagine with me, guys. Let's pick on Becky this morning. Let's just say Becky flops out on the floor and goes to just having all sorts of spasms. And instead of everybody running and rendering aid, I say, well, Lucas, how long has this been going on? Casual conversation here. Keep in mind, Becky's still flopping. Well, how long ago has it been since it came into him? And he said, well, she's been doing this since she was a child. We're having a conversation and she's a flopping. I find this portion amusing here. And then the dad says, well, this ain't even the worst of it. Sometimes this spirit causes her to jump in the fire and makes her jump in the water and is trying to kill her. There's some bad things happening here. Oh, yeah? Well. But then he says something. The daddy here is saying that they're desperate. They've tried everything. There's nothing else that will work. So we came maybe some distance. Maybe they was local. Who knows what it was. But understand the fact that with his boy in the situation that he was in and with what he's trying to convey, that it is really problematic to have to travel anywhere with the boy. But he has taken him and he has had the initiative to come in to see his disciples here. He's desperate. There is nowhere else to turn. But I told you he called him master, but he didn't believe. Because he looked at Jesus, and I have no doubt he looked at him eye to eye, and he spoke man to man. He said, but if you can do anything, if you can do anything. Understand, how many times have we as Christian people approached an altar or approached the presence of God through prayer, and we said, Lord, if you can do this, if you can hear me, if you can answer this, if it is possible, because Jesus said all things are possible. Amen. If. Christian people today will approach God in prayer and we will still say if. But we cover our bases. Well, if it's God's will. If God chooses to. So you mean that when we approach the Lord with a need or with a burden, it's okay to say, well, Lord, if you ain't too busy, if you have time, and if it is okay, would you mind handling this? And if not, I'm perfectly content with taking it back with me. Because when you throw if in there, you might as well say, Lord, I'm not really sure that you can do this, but I'm going to ask anyways. Your kids ever ask you strange things? Like they find a cat at church and they come up to you and they say, Mommy, Daddy, can we take this cat home? Knowing that you're going to say no, and sometimes they'll even start the conversation out this way. I know what the answer is going to be, but that's ridiculous, is it not? Parents, look at me. You've been asked that. I know you're going to say no, but I'm going to ask anyways. But yet you do that when you go to the Lord in prayer. If you can do anything. If thou canst do anything, have compassion on us and help us if you can. Master? That don't seem right, does it? It don't seem right to approach him and say, Master, I'm so glad you're here. Hey, brother, I need you. If you truly are who you say you are, if you really can do this, I need your help because I'm desperate. I've looked everywhere else. Why is God the last place we turn? This is where we as a church kind of do this. I don't know. Because we don't. God's the last place we're going to turn for anything. You get sick, something comes up, you're not going to approach the altar and say, Preacher, I would desire to be anointed because I want this taken away from me. We will approach the doctor's office and say, Lord, please do something. I'm going to put my life in the hands of a man or a woman. Because God, I know you're busy. There's a lot going on in the world and you may not have time and it might not be your will, so I'll just go to the doctor. Do you think the doctor can heal you if God don't want him to? No. Do you think the doctor can take any sickness or anything out of you if God says, no? Why do we think man has more power than God? But Jesus said unto them, said, if thou canst believe, But I want to think that he kind of looks at him because, again, the boy's still flopping. Understand, he's not stopped convulsing. He's not stopped flopping and foaming at the mouth. There's a true medical emergency happening here. The people is probably hushed in silence thinking, what in the world is going to happen now? But then Jesus looks at him. I want to see a small smile come across his face and say, if I can. This is hilarious, buddy. If I can. But he looks at him and says, but if you can believe, if I can. If you can. It has nothing to do with me, Jesus says. He says, because Jesus said, all power is given unto me in heaven and earth. It's not if I can, it's if you can. I got nothing in this. You came to me. Why would you come to me if you think I can't? If you can. If you can believe, Jesus does not say some good things can happen. He said, hey, if you can believe, all things are possible. That includes a true healing, whether it be physical or whether it be spiritual, if you can believe. I love what the daddy says. Conviction came upon the dad here. And he cried out and he saith with tears, as that convicted heart began and the tears running down his face, and he might be getting a little scared because his boy's still flopping. He says, I believe, but help my unbelief. So, he says this in our terms. He says, but I've been to church my whole life. I have heard of the wonderful things that the Lord can do. I have heard all these things, and I believe He can do it, but I ain't got no faith. Help my unbelief. Help me to have faith. But he left all of it in Jesus' hands. He did not retain any portion. He said, Master, I believe in you, but I need you to help me believe more. I need you to help me have more trust. I need you to help my unbelief. Well, preacher, how can he say, I believe, but help my unbelief? Just as we do. You believe in the Lord or else you couldn't be saved. However, we don't believe in handing Him everything in our life. Help my unbelief. Help my unbelief. I need you. Envision with me. Let's say, Master, I believe in you, but I need you to help me with my unbelief. But I'm going to pick my boy up, but if you can't still, I'm going to ease on down the road. It's not what he done. He left it all there. He had played his hand. He had exhausted every effort that he had, and he was content with leaving his boy there. His boy. This ain't just some problem he has. This is his child. But then as the people came together, Jesus rebuked the spirit, and He said, Thou dumb and deaf spirit, I charge thee, come out of him, and enter no more into him. And the spirit cried and rent him sore, and came out of him, and he was as one dead. So the boy stopped flopping, everything stopped happening, and there was nothing but silence. You could have heard a pin drop outdoors in a crowded street with a multitude of people there. They say Jesus, they see him and they say, Spirit, come out of him now. And don't you ever go back into him. And the boy stops moving. And by this time, where I get some of the amusement, some people's probably thinking, oh, he laid there and flopped so long while they talked, he probably died. They thought he was dead. Everything stopped. But what did Jesus do? What did Jesus do? He didn't say, Spirit, come out of him. And when everything got silent, he didn't turn and walk off. He reached his hand down and he picked the boy up. It wasn't enough for the daddy to give him his child into the Lord and say, Lord, help him. I need you to help my unbelief. Jesus didn't stop there. He picked the boy up. He saw it all the way through. Do you think that helped the daddy's unbelief? I bet you he had faith to give anything he could ever desire unto the Lord. Amen? If you saw Melvin fall over dead as a doornail right here in the pew and us cry out into the Lord and say, Lord, we need your help, and we stick our hand out and we pick Melvin back up, everybody in here could believe, couldn't you? That could help your unbelief. But if you never bring anything to the Lord anyways, how are you supposed to believe? You just hear. You hear of what God can do. You hear of miracles in other churches. You hear of miraculous healings in different places. You hear of all these things. But we don't have the faith to take part of it. But now let's pause here. Because there is something still major that is hanging above us. We have just witnessed this great miracle. But what about that faithless generation of people? What about, oh faithless generation, how long shall I be with you? How long shall I suffer you? How long am I going to put up with your unbelief? What about them? Well, they began to evaluate the loss. They began to go back through it. Well, what could we have done different? Well, if I'd have done this, well, what about that? No doubt, they started pointing blame at somebody. Well, it's your fault. Thomas, it's your fault. You're the one who caused it not to do. Hey, you're the one who always has a hard time believing. It's all on you. Well, Peter, if you was a better leader, this wouldn't happen. Well, John, if you'd have done this. All these things, they began to point blame. I have no doubt in my mind they began to do this because they was talking amongst themselves. What happened? Look at all we have done and what happened. Look at everything that we have done with Jesus, the Son of God. And we have this poor boy who comes into us and his daddy, and they're really needing help, and we can't do nothing. What happened? They began to evaluate what went wrong. Turn with me to the book of Matthew. We get a better picture of this here. As the disciples are arguing amongst themselves here in Matthew chapter 17, beginning in the 18th verse here, it says, And Jesus rebuked the devil and departed out of him, and the child was cured from that very hour. And the disciples came to Jesus apart. They didn't want everybody around. They didn't want everybody to see what was about to happen. After they had tried to come up with the answer amongst themselves, they finally came to Jesus and they said, Master, what happened? Why could we not do this? They said, why could not we cast him out? And Jesus said, because of your unbelief. Why can my prayers not be answered? Why is the things that I'm praying for, why is it as if God can't hear these? Because of your unbelief. Why is it that I have prayed and I have prayed and I have asked for this and I have asked for that and all the things that are happening? Why, Lord? Why? Because of your unbelief. Why is it that I have prayed that I would get better, that I have prayed for this result, that I have prayed for this person, and I have asked for this and I've asked for that? Why? Because of your unbelief. It's plain and simple. Jesus said he don't even mince his words. He don't even give a long parable that they would have to scratch their head and think upon. He told them straight the way it was because you don't believe. No doubt I want to think that there was a question come from the back of the line there that says, well, how much do we have to believe? Because there's a smart aleck in every bunch, and it's usually me. Well, how much do we have to believe? How much faith is it that I need? Do I have to have a bunch? Do I have to be a lifetime Christian, a lifetime member of the church? Do I have to be a faithful tither? Do I have to know the Scripture? Do I have to know the Bible? No. Well, preacher, if I have a desire to see miracles in my life, if I have a desire to see a healing, if I have a desire to get rid of this this burden, this whatever it may be, whatever the addiction may be, if I have a desire to see it, what must you have? Faith. How much? All the flies that are laying in here dead are about 3 times the size of what you need. Grain of mustard seed, smallest one. Smallest seed that you can have. If it's that size, you could turn into this mountain and say, I need you to pick yourself up and fill in the valley over here. Because Jesus says, if you have faith as a grain of mustard seed, you shall say unto this mountain, remove hence to yonder place, and it shall be removed. Whatever you desire to see moved out of your life. You can say, burden, problem, sickness, call it by name, you can call it whatever you want to call it. I need you out of here. There is no place for you in my life. I need you gone. And if you have faith, how much faith, preacher? Very little. That's a good thing it takes very little. Because ain't none of us got much. But we don't have enough to the size of that mustard seed, because I've not seen too many people in here moving the mountains out of the way. And if anybody here's got that much faith, would you please move this mountain over here, because it'd make it getting to church a lot easier for me. Help the preacher out if you would. But you think of all the mountains that are in your life. How nice would it be to move those? Stay with me. Because of your unbelief, he says. But then go on to what he says. He says, however, there is a catch. You can't expect this to happen and only give me half of yourself. You can't give me 15, 25, 30, or 50% of your life and expect any of this to happen. Sorry. It's not the way it works. Jesus says, he says, howbeit this only comes. Why can't I see my prayers answered? Why can't this happen? Because, preacher, I don't have the unbelief. I do believe, and I have full faith that God can take care of this. But it's still not happening, so what now? How often do you pray? What's your prayer life? Do you pray without ceasing? Do you pray for your brothers and sisters? Do you enter into your closet, to your secret place, to your place of solitude, to where nothing can bother you? Do you get on your knees? Do you put your face to the floor, and do you pray? No? Well, there you go. That's why. Preacher, I do those things. I have a very active prayer life. I'm very much in prayer for all sorts of things at all times. Well, Jesus also says, do you fast? Fast? That's in the Old Testament. You don't have to do that. You are wrong. Baptist people, we are wrong. Because Jesus said this only comes by prayer and by fasting. It don't have to be fasting from your breakfast, or fasting from your lunch, or fasting from breakfast, lunch, and supper all together. Personally, I think God would be pleased with any kind of fast you wanted to put forth. Any effort's better than none. Well, I'm going to fast from the TV. I'm going to fast from the phone. I'm going to fast from, I want to do this. Well, I'm going to do this. Well, don't go forth and tell everybody, because you know what Jesus said about that too. Preacher said I need to fast, so evidently I need to go on a diet and act like I'm not eating. No, that's not what I said. I said that you must have faith in God and be willing to sacrifice yourself the way He did Himself. You have to be willing to put yourself in need, to put yourself totally dependent upon Him, because that is exactly what the daddy did in the story with his boy. He took and he left himself totally dependent upon the Lord. It was in His hands. Howbeit this kind, you don't get faith like this unless you pray and unless you fast. You can't become totally dependent upon the Lord unless you spend time in prayer. And understand this. Prayer is not only you talking. I don't know how you guys' prayer life goes, but when I pray, I try to spend a few moments there, because you guys know I kind of like to talk quite a bit, but I spend a few moments there with silence and only listening to trying to feel the direction of the Lord, to be able to hear the direction of the Lord, because sometimes Christ will speak audibly, and sometimes He speaks with a feeling from the inside by the direction and the guidance of the Holy Spirit. That's prayer. Prayer is not, well, Lord, watch over my kids, keep them safe. I'm going to be traveling here this week. I need you to watch over me. I need this right here going on. By the way, you know all our bills are due, and we all got to eat and all these everything. Hey, that's not just prayer. That's a wish list. Prayer is true one-on-one alone time with the Lord, whether He's speaking or whether you're speaking. That is prayer.